Okay, I think we're about ready to reconvene. Hopefully everybody got some wonderful food or some coffee. We have a wonderful set of panels to proceed with this afternoon. I want to thank the first panelists as well. I think that was just a wonderful way to start us off, getting us thinking. And again, if those of you who didn't get a chance to ask your questions, we are going to have a Q&A opportunity after each of these panels. So please continue to keep track of your questions. Those of you joining us on live stream, we're super eager that you're here with us. So we're going to go ahead and get started again. We are moving to our second panel, and the title of this panel is called Genomics and Ancestry, Ethics, Origins, and Policy. And we're super excited to have a very distinguished panel with us today to talk with us about some of their perspectives and to help frame this conversation that we'll have following. To moderate this panel, we are very excited to have someone you saw previously, Dr. David Penney. I'll give you a more full bio this time. He's an internationally recognized scholar in the field of Native American art and culture and serves as the first associate director of the National Museum of the Americans Indians New Scholarship Department. In addition, he manages the offices of History and Culture, Latin America, Collections, Research and Documentation, Contemporary Art, and Repatriation. Busy guy. He received his PhD in art history and archaeology from Columbia University. Penney has curated many exhibitions of note, including one spanning 3,000 years of history while at the Detroit Institute of Art, and contributes to scholarship through his role as an adjunct professor of art history at Wayne State University. Please welcome Dr. David Penney.
Thank you so much. I hope you had a satisfying lunch. It's my great privilege to introduce some of our speakers in the panel this afternoon. I just will offer just a few preliminary remarks. Of course, the topic we're going to be dealing with is titled Genomics and Ancestry, Ethics, Origins, and Policy. To that, I would also add issues of cultural identity and also sovereignty, because the control over ancestral remains remains a kind of issue of sovereignty. In this morning's talk, sort of an interesting analogy emerges between human biosamples, or human tissue samples in a medical context, and archaeologically recovered human remains. And one might argue that similar kinds of principles in terms of the ethics might apply. Principles of informed consent of the individual, recognition of cultural sensitivities and protocols, and then the remaining question of who speaks for those ancestral remains. I think it's fair to say that the Smithsonian, history of the Smithsonian Institution, my own institution here, serves or provides us a kind of a cautionary tale about collecting the curation of American Indian human remains in its history. We are familiar with horrific collecting practices of the late part of the 19th century, collecting the bodies of enemy combatants, collecting from cemeteries on the part of government field agents. And although those may seem kind of antique considerations of a now discredited science, those issues were not really addressed substantially in terms of curation until 1989. And that is the date, which I mentioned earlier. We're just celebrating the 25th anniversary of the National Museum of the American Indian Act, which was the first federal repatriation legislation, as well as establishing the National Museum of the American Indian. This was followed shortly by, of course, NAGPRA, the Native American Grave Protection and Repatriation Act of 1990. The NMAI founders, those individuals who were responsible for creating the National Museum of the American Indian, and I include Senator Inouye, the late senator who was so instrumental in creating this institution. They were deeply engaged with these events. And as a result of negotiating with the Smithsonian, our Board of Trustees required full control over our collections, unlike other Smithsonian museums or collections. The high collection that we curate and we stored would move down from New York City. It was not a scientific collection, but nevertheless contained human relics, some from provenient sites, others unprovenienced. The board of the NMAI made its first priority of its repatriation policy the respectful and appropriate return of all ancestral remains under our care to the ground in close collaboration and consultation with the tribes. That is our policy. We do not permit destructive testing of any ancestral remains under our stewardship. This, again, is a matter of policy. Those are decisions that we've made in light of this continuing concern over this history that weighs upon us. Of course, we're excited to hear from our colleagues about new directions, but the questions, I think, remain the same. What are the ethical issues with regard to the scientific testing of archaeological remains? Who speaks for them in terms of the principle of informed consent? And what kinds of information do we seek and for what purpose from those kinds of tests?